Class of 2018, alumni. I think that's the correct pronunciation. Parents, grandparents, siblings, aunts and uncles, and friends of the college. This is a wonderful occasion to be together. I would like to address a few remarks to you who are graduating. The rest of you can listen if you like, but you don't have to. You have just passed through 8 wonderful months, except for Latin, of course. Now that's another story. We won't discuss it today. So, the title of our observations today is Rectum Iter, the right road, the way ahead. Let me begin by asking you a question. Have you ever found yourself on the wrong road or on the wrong street? I have. Last year, after some wedding anniversary celebrations in southern Ontario, on a beautiful afternoon, I decided to return via a secondary road, which would take me through Smiths Falls. Now, I've been in Smiths Falls a considerable number of times. I knew it, how to drive and all the rest very well. But there is in Smiths Falls a junction. You have to choose between several roads. And I did that because I knew exactly what I was doing. And so on I went. And after about 7 or 8 kilometers, something said to me, Bloedow, I think you're on the wrong road. So I took my bearings from the sun. It was a beautiful early evening. And I decided, yes, I was on the wrong road. So I turned around, drove the 7 or 8 miles back to Smiths Falls, and took another turn, and soon found myself on the right road. Now, it's a great feeling to be on the right road, isn't it? When you arrived here last September, I hope you already found yourself on the right road. And that the last 8 months have been a significant spurt on your journey. Incidentally, the word iter can also mean journey. But now, it's the way ahead. And what is that way going to be like for you? Amongst many other things that I could say, I should like to emphasize 3 aspects in particular. And these are 1, orientation, 2, duration or endurance, and 3, completion. Let's look at these 3 very quickly and examine them a bit. 1, orientation. A few weeks ago, we had the sentence, ex oribus meis rectum iter demonstrare possumus. That is, on the basis of my mistakes, I can demonstrate the right road to men. Remember that sentence? I'm sure you do. But do you remember the author? That's another matter. Well, it was Seneca the Younger. Now, Seneca the Younger was a very interesting individual. He lived from 4 BC to 65 AD. And like his father, who taught rhetoric in Rome, he was not a Roman. Didn't even come from Italy. He actually came from Cordoba in Spain. Now, he became a very famous philosopher, among other things, and he was read by Augustine, by Anselm, by Aquinas, by Luther, by Calvin, by many, many others. He also became a statesman and wrote plays. And what's also interesting about Seneca is that some modern scholars think that he was probably the leading intellectual in Rome in the first century AD. And in that, his time overlapped to some extent with Nero, who was emperor from 54 to AD 68. Now, what do you know about Nero? Probably that, but the fire in Rome and the persecution of the Christians. Is that all? A lot more to Nero than that. In fact, it was said by some in antiquity that the first 5 years of Nero's reign, from 54 to 59, in those 5 years, the Roman Empire was governed better than at any other time in its history. Really? Really? What is responsible? Seneca. But not Seneca only. There was another individual involved, namely, by the name of Bloedow. Well, he too was not from Rome, nor from Italy. In fact, he came from Gaul. And between the two of them, they're responsible for running the Roman government. Until Agrippina, Nero's notorious mother, got onto the scene, and she didn't like Seneca, and made his life very difficult, so difficult that by AD 65, he was forced to commit suicide. But back to his statement, out of my mistakes, I can demonstrate the right road to man. That's very interesting, isn't it? Do we learn by our mistakes? I think many of us do. I think I still have ringing in my ears from about 80 years ago when either one of my parents would say, "How many times have I told you not to do that?" They were trying to educate me by my mistakes, learning from my mistakes. And indeed, Seneca's observation is really quite a good one. We do learn from our mistakes if we are wise. But if you look a little more closely at Seneca's statement, it is essentially negative. But we Christians have a more positive orientation. For instance, in a certain context, the Apostle Paul, writing to the Corinthians, said, "And yet show I unto you a more excellent way." Now, we don't have to learn by our mistakes. We as Christians have a better orientation. What is this better orientation, or this better way? I suggest that we can find it in part in the great 119th Psalm, which we just had read. "Thy word is a lamp unto my feet, and a light unto my path. I have sworn, and I will confirm it, that I will keep thy righteous ordinances." It's good, isn't it? Well, I assure you that if you read the Bible every day, it will provide you with an orientation whereby you can never go wrong. It will keep you on the right road. It reminds one also of David's words in his great psalm of dedication. "For thou art my lamp, O Lord. and the Lord illumines my darkness. Fast forward to the evangelist John, writing in his gospel towards the end of the 1st century AD, these words: "There was the true light, which, coming into the world, enlightens every man." Ooh, that's a statement, isn't it? There was the true light, which, coming into the world, enlightens every man. John was doubtlessly remembering the words of his master of more than half a century earlier, which was our second reading. And therefore again Jesus spoke to them, that's to the Jews, saying, "I am the light of the world. He who follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." Mohammed never said that. Nor did any other great religious leader. Have you ever found yourself in darkness? I mean real darkness. Real pitch black darkness. I have. When I used to teach at the university, I had some early morning lectures. And that meant from where I live that I would have to drive in rush hour on the Queensway. Now, I'm an individual who does not like to sit in traffic very long. So I said, Bloedow, you've got to figure this out. So I thought about it, and I did. So I used to leave at 5 o'clock in the morning, sail in, no problem, work 2 hours in my office, give my lecture, and the problem solved. Now, one morning I came out, I think we've lost her here. One morning I came out, and it was pitch black dark, total black darkness. And even darker when you turn off the light inside. And I'd always parked my car in exactly the same place, and I knew exactly where to go, and so I went. Think I could find my car? No. Started wandering around and feeling, etc. And this went on for about 5 or 6 minutes, and I was getting exasperated. And even thought maybe somebody had stolen my car, because I used to leave the keys in it. Finally, I just gave up. Well, made my way back into the house, turned on the outside light, went out. Sure enough, there was my car, exactly where I'd left it. It's not great fun to walk in the darkness, is it, to be totally in the dark? It reminds us also of Paul's great words writing to the Colossians. Thanks be to God, who has delivered us from the realm of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of the Son of his love. Now, we have, in the earliest days of Christianity, striking terminology. Luke, writing in Acts, says, "Now Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked for letters from him to the synagogues of Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way," hodos in Greek, via in Latin, "both men and women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem." Now, 9 times in the book of Acts, the term "the way" is used to characterize incipient Christianity. It's great to be identified with the way, isn't it? As Christians, there is therefore most excellent orientation for you and for me. But there's another side to orientation, namely what we might call attitude. Of course, you'll encounter many difficulties on the way ahead, But so much will depend on attitude on your iter. Here's Paul's advice. Rejoice in the Lord. Again, I say rejoice. He had already written, finally, my brethren, rejoice in the Lord. I have learned to be content in whatever circumstances I am. I know how to get along with humble means, and I also know how to live in prosperity. And in any and every circumstance I have learned the secret of being filled and going hungry, both of having abundance and of suffering need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. One thinks of the words of Wilson MacDonald, which certainly are not the greatest poetry, but I think they get a good point. How far is it to Antioch, friend? Oh, 9 miles, 10 miles, on and on. Ere you reach the city gates, sunlight will be gone. 10 miles of dust and sun, I wander down the road. Fearful of earth and sky, it seemed as if the lagging fields would never pass me by. And then I asked a maid, how far is it to Antioch, lass? She said, 9 miles of clear blue sky and 9 of waving grass. 9 miles to walk with wind blown hither from the sea. 9 miles to watch the red-plumed birds flame in the dark-plumed tree. Oh, then the fields went by with swift and nimble feet, and I was soon in Antioch and laughing down a street. So much will depend on attitude, on your iter. A cheerful disposition will be an enormous benefit to you. So orientation is very, very important. And we have, as I said, the Word of God, but we have the Word of God made flesh as well. Point number 2, endurance. James adds his contribution. Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. As you will from this point travel the road of life, so much will depend on faithfulness, not losing sight of the goal. Endurance is what you will need. Now, good endurance could make you into a David and a Gideon. Now, the following may sound slightly Sunday schoolish, but William Cowper is not wide of the mark. By whom was David taught to aim the deadly blow? When he Goliath fought and laid the Gittite low. No sword nor spear the stippling took, but chose a pebble from the brook. 'Twas Israel's God and King who sent him to the fight, who gave him strength to sling and skill to aim aright. Ye feeble saints, your strength endures, because your David's God is yours. Who ordered Gideon forth to storm the invaders' camp? With arms of little worth, a pitcher and a lamp. The trumpets made his coming known, and all the host was overthrown. Oh, I have seen the day when with a single word, God helping me to say, my trust is in the Lord. My soul hath quelled 1,000 foes, fearless of all who could oppose. But unbelief, self-will, self-righteousness, and pride, how often do they steal my weapons from my side? Yet David's Lord and Gideon's friend will help his servant to the end. There will be many things on your way ahead that will test your steadfastness and your endurance. C.S. Lewis tells of his visit one evening to the principal of Westcott House, Cambridge, in 1959. The principal was to become the Bishop of Edinburgh as the Right Reverend Kenneth Carey. There happened to be a book lying on the table in the room where they were by an individual by the name of Alec Fiddler. Title was Windsor Sermons, published the year before, 1958. While the principal left the room briefly, Lewis read Fiddler's essay, namely The Sign of Cana. When the principal returned, he asked Lewis what he thought of what he had read. Lewis's reply was, "I think it's quite incredible that we should have to wait nearly 2,000 years to be told by a theologian called Fiddler that what the church has always regarded as a miracle is in fact a parable." There will be many things ahead that will test your faithfulness, your steadfastness, your endurance. Hence Paul's admonition already in antiquity, writing on maturity to the Christians at Ephesus, so that we may no longer be children tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the cunning of men, and by the craftiness of deceitful wiles. Endurance is what you will need. Point number 3, completion. When you come to the end of the journey, what will the result be? In the last of our 3 texts today, we have the solemn words of the seasoned apostle to young Timothy. "This command I entrust to you, Timothy, my son, in accordance with the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you might fight the good fight, milites bonum militem, keeping faith and good conscience, which some have rejected and suffered shipwreck in regard to their faith. Among these are Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I have delivered over to Satan, so that they may be taught not to blaspheme." Regrettably, there are some students who have attended Augustine College who no longer find themselves on the right road, on the rectum iter. Thankfully, most of them do, and Dr. Patrick keeps meeting them in his many travels. I hope that in the years to come, you will be amongst them. I remind you also of Shelley's famous words. "I met a traveller from an antique land who said, 'Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them, on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command. Tell that its sculptor well those passions read, which yet survive stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed, and on the pedestal these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away.'" At the end of your journey, you do not want to end up like Hymenaeus and Alexander, or an Ozymandias. We never hear of anything again of Hymenaeus and Alexander, and as for Ozymandias, he's probably still lying in the desert sands of the Near East. Walter Hooper tells of a conversation with C.S. Lewis in which he recalled that once in a cemetery he came upon a grave with this epitaph: "Here lies an atheist, all dressed up and nowhere to go." To which Lewis quipped, "I bet he wishes it were so." Would you rather not have it said of you, as it was of William Wilberforce, the great evangelical Christian who did so much in bringing about the abolition of slavery? "Then let them scoff who 2 prizes thou hast won, freedom for captives and thy God's well done. Or, enjoy what thou hast won, esteem and love from all the just on earth and all the blessed above." Coming up from the 18th to the 20th of May, there will be in the United States the Wilberforce Weekend, to which already 600 people have committed themselves to attend. That's a way to be remembered, isn't it? Or the words of Paul, who could say, writing at the end of his life again to Timothy, "I have fought the good fight, bonum certamen certave," or in Greek, kalon agona agonismai. "I have contested a good contest. I have finished the course, I have kept the faith. In the future there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will award to me on that day, and not only to me, but also to all who have loved his appearing." As you now embark on the way ahead, may you take up the famous words of the great apostle: "I have been crucified with Christ, and it is no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. And the life which I now live, I live in the flesh by the faith of the Son of God, who loved me and delivered himself up for me." Or, also Paul, "But whatever things were gained to me, those things I count as loss for the sake of Christ. More than that, I count all things as loss in view of the surpassing value of knowing Christ my Lord, for whom I have suffered the loss of all things and count them but rubbish, in order that I may gain Christ and may be found in him, not having a righteousness of my own, derived from the law, but that which is through Christ, through faith in Christ, the righteousness which comes from God on the basis of faith." Let me conclude with some other words from William Cowper. "O Lord, my best desire fulfill, and help me to resign life, health, comfort to thy will, and make thy pleasure mine. Why should I shrink from thy command, whose love forbids my fears, or tremble at thy gracious hand that wipes away my tears? No, let me rather freely yield what most I prize to thee, who never hast a good withheld, and will not withheld from me. Thy favor all my journey through, thou art engaged to grant. What else I want or think I do, 'tis better still to want. Wisdom and mercy guide my way. Shall I resist them both, a poor blind creature of a day, and crushed before them off? But my inward spirit cries, still bind me to thy way, else the next cloud that veils the skies drives all these thoughts away. May the way ahead be for you characterized by firm orientation, solid endurance, and splendid completion. Thank you.